days. So today my colleague Devon Gordon and myself Angelina Gordon will be presenting on the cycles in nature, which are the carbon, water and the nitrogen cycle. I will now start off with the nitrogen cycle. What is the nitrogen cycle? The nitrogen cycle is a natural process that basically shows how nitrogen moves throughout the environment. And we know that nitrogen is very essential for life because it's a key component in protein, DNA, and the other important molecules in living organisms. So before I go any further, I would like to show you a model of, okay, so this is a model of the nitrogen cycle. It is showing all of the processes that occurs in the nitrogen cycle. So we know that the Earth is made up of 78% of nitrogen gas, but unfortunately, the plants and animals cannot use this nitrogen gas directly. So a process called nitrogen fixation occurs where a bacteria called the nitrogen fixing bacteria converts this nitrogen into ammonia, which is NH3, or nitrate, which is NO3, these are all forms of nitrogen, but when it is converted into this form, the plants and animals can absorb and use this to build protein. So the next process is called assimilation, and this is whereby plants absorb nitrogen. So the next process is assimilation, which is right here. It's pointing upwards towards the plant. So assimilation is whereby the plants absorb the nitrogen from the soil. They absorb the nitrogen from the soil in the form of ammonia, which is ammonia or nitrate, which is, we have nitrate here because this is NO3, where they will incorporate this nitrogen into their tissues and build proteins and other essential molecules. The next process, the next process is ammonification, and this is whereby when plants or animals die, or when animals produce waste, the organic nitrogen in their tissue is broken down by decomposer organisms such as fungi or bacteria, and these decomposer then converts organic nitrogen compounds into ammonia, which is represented by NH3 through a process called ammonification. Okay, so the next process is nitrification. So ammonia, which is NH3, produced by ammonification that we just talked about, can be further converted into nitrate, which is NO2, or nitrate, which is NO3, by the nitrifying bacteria, which is here. This process is known as nitrification. Nitrate is also a form of nitrogen that plants can absorb and use. Okay, so the last process is denitrification here. This is where the denitrifying bacteria converts nitrates into the nitrogen gas, completing the nitrogen cycle. So this process occurs in an oxygen depleted environment like waterlogged soil or sediment. Denitrification then returns the nitrogen to the atmosphere, where it can be used by the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, so now we'll move on to the water cycle. This is a model of the water cycle. Another name for the water cycle is the hydrological cycle. So the water cycle is how water moves around the earth. The first stage that we will look at is evaporation, which is right here. This is when the sun heats up water from the ocean, the river, lakes, and even puddles, turning it into invisible water vapor. This vapor then rises up to the sky, as you can see here. The next process, we have air condensation. So as the water vapor rises higher, it cools down and turns back into tiny droplets forming cloud. Right here. Then we have precipitation. So this is when the clouds gets very heavy with the water droplets, then they release them down as rain or snow. And this is called precipitation. Then we have the runoff, which is showing on this mountain here. This is where okay, so the runoff is where the precipitation falls on the ground from hills or mountain, as you can see here, into rivers and lakes and oceans also. So it also seeps into the ground, becoming groundwater, as you can see here. Then we have the collection, which is right here. And eventually all the water gathers in the ocean, lakes, and river, and even underwater reservoirs. It starts to cycle again by getting heated by the sun and evaporating. So this cycle repeats over and over again.
Good day, everyone. Today we'll be speaking about the carbon cycle, mostly about carbon, and we all know carbon. An example of a carbon is a diamond, but mostly we'll be speaking about the carbon cycle and carbon dioxide. Now, the carbon cycle basically shows how carbon is transferred from one organism to another in its environment as they live, breathe, respire, and die, and decompose. Now, there is about 0.3% of carbon within the atmosphere. Now, during photosynthesis, this carbon is used by plants, of course, to create carbohydrates, and consumers then eat these carbohydrates, and it's incorporated. The carbon, remember, it's carbohydrates. The carbon is then incorporated within their bodies, and now all consumers or so, they would defecate or create feces. Now there's something known as a decomposer. The decomposer breaks down the feces, thus incorporating the carbon within their own bodies, and they respire. Also, the decomposers also respire carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Now, some of the dead animals, they eventually are decomposed when the waterlogged areas that isn't rich in oxygen. The decomposers then decompose those dead bodies fully, and they eventually turn to fossil fuel. But of course, this occurs over a long period. Now I have a model of the carbon cycle here, and I'll show you, and you can observe it. Here's the model of the carbon cycle. As you could clearly see, it shows every step of the carbon cycle. As you can see, the cows respire and carbon is released back into the atmosphere. Decomposers, they break down the feces and incorporate carbon within their bodies, and then they also respire. I hope you like the model, and that's all. Good day.